go over to John chapter 4. I want us to look each week. We're talking about being a natural at sharing Jesus. Remember, the idea here is we may not all be what are known as evangelists who are capable of getting up, proclaiming a message about Jesus, giving all the book, chapter, verses that we want to whenever we want to, being able to give answers for everything that we'd like to. But we can all share Jesus. And we need to understand that it should be a natural part of our relationship with Jesus. I mean, it's just like if somebody asks me about Angela. I have no problem telling people about Angela and about good things, by the way, just to share that. Being able to tell them about who she is and what she likes, what she doesn't like, her good qualities, so the things that she does for our family. I mean, I can tell people that, and it's no problem. So why is it a problem for a lot of folks to tell people about Jesus? And so we want to become more natural at doing that. And so we're going to look at some of these folks. One of them here is in John chapter 4. Let's start in verse 4. Jesus had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You're a Jew, and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." He told her, "Go, call your husband and come back." "Well, I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, "I can see that you're a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know. For salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the Spirit and in truth." The woman said, "I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." And Jesus declared, "I, the one speaking to you, I am he." Now skip down to verse 39, excuse me. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. "He told me everything I ever did." So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the woman, "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world." You listen to this story, what are some of the things that jump out at you about what happens in this story?
Well, it's kind of like you said, it's doing it natural. It all was natural in the chain of events.
Yeah. What training did this woman have to go and tell people about Jesus? Not a bit. It didn't even take her a while to think about it. She just got up and started telling people stuff. What else you notice about what happens here?
Jesus knew her past.
Jesus did know her past. And what did he do with that past? Or maybe a better question might be, what did Jesus not do about her past?
He revealed it to her, not everybody else.
It was a private conversation between the two of them. And it was a conversation. It was a dialogue. It was a give and take. When he knew about her past, he didn't start telling her all the problems with her past. I'm pretty sure she knew the problems with her past. She didn't have to be convinced. But Jesus just talked with her. Anything else?
Well, he didn't chastise her at all.
He didn't call her down for anything in this.
Actually, everybody else in town knew her past probably. And that's what was kind of impressive, is when she told them they knew it, but Jesus wouldn't have had a reason to.
Look at who this person is. She's got 3 strikes against her. Now, in her own town, 2 strikes, but she has at least 3 strikes against her. Number one, she's a Samaritan. Jews don't associate with Samaritans. When the disciples come back, they're surprised that he's been talking to the Samaritan woman. I mean, you just don't do that. Strike number 2, she's a woman. No offense to any woman in here, but that's just kind of the way it was in that time. And men don't sit around talking to women like this. And then third strike is she is a damaged woman. She's had 5 husbands, and the one she's now living with isn't even her husband. She's been discarded. Many believe that when she's coming to the well, I mean, it's in the middle of the day, and you just don't do that in the middle of the day. It gets hot. You either go in the morning when it's cool, you go in the evening when it's cool, you don't come in the middle of the day. And so many speculate that the reason why she comes at this time of the day is because that way she can avoid other folks that are coming to the well at the same time. And isn't it interesting that this woman who had the reputation that she had goes back into town, starts sharing her experience with Jesus, and the whole town comes out to see what she's been talking about. With her reputation, she has a certain measure of influence with the people that know about her reputation. Something?
Jesus used a simple, what was it? Maybe approach or a simple example of, I mean, just give me a glass of water. And she was thinking, you know, something like a glass of water. And he said, this is what I've got though. This glass of water that I've got to you, you'll never thirst again. But it's nothing out of the, you know, out of this world or whatever. It's a real simple deal. Just give me a glass of water. Or can I get a glass of water?
And he turns that into an object lesson about real water.
Well, I think what's standing out to me as I think about it is the very idea that she shared, she just got her blessing, and that she put herself out there to share it with those people. So that's kind of stands out to me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she was a very honest person. And she didn't make excuses.
Yeah. Yeah, she's pretty bold. She doesn't make excuses. She's very open about her past. Yeah. These people come out, and notice, you know, we talked about once you make that connection, once you're able to share what Jesus has done for you, then you can lead that person to someone who can go deeper. And that's what she did. She shared her experience with Jesus. She didn't have a lot of theological training. She said, now, we've heard about this Messiah, and I've come to believe that this is he. And that's where she left it. Then they came to Jesus, and he did the teaching. That's what we've been talking about in here. Let's talk about a little bit from, where we've been. We started out talking about how it starts with prayer. Asking God to open our eyes, open our ears, show us the opportunities that are around us, open up those hearts so that we can have those conversations. And I hope that you're still doing that. You're still kind of keeping your eyes open for those opportunities that God may be giving during the week. The second session, we talked about living questionable lives, living a life that is starkly different from the lives around us. And it gets much more difficult. Well, it gets a little bit more difficult to do that than whenever the apostles were writing, because the Christian life was so different from the pagan lives that they lived around. Now we've got so many folks that, the whole world is Christian, right? At least, the Bible Belt, we got a church on every street corner. And so trying to live a life that is in contrast to good people out there can be very difficult. Now, one of the things we're going to talk about tonight will actually cause us to live questionable lives, by the way, that will give a stark difference from other folks around us. And so I want us to kind of keep that in mind as we get there. And then last week, I wasn't here, Mike taught in here, and he visited. What we want to do is to develop in our lives certain habits, certain things that we just do because that's what we've trained ourselves to do. And one of the thing that he talked about last week was to become people who bless other people's lives. Now, the assignment for those of you that were here, Santi and JJ, was to go out and bless 3 people this last week. Did you do your assignment?
I feel like I did.
Yeah? Any thoughts or stories or?
Bought lunch for one guy. I met a preacher during a delivery and asked him what his favorite verse was. And then just seeing the way he was talking about Christ, I'm sure it blessed him, but it also blessed me. And well, I guess those are my 2 for right now. I got 2 out of 3.
Well, that's good. That's good. How do people respond to that, do you feel like?
The preacher responded like, boy, he was sharp, he was ready. He was real passionate about it. And the person that was with me, my partner at the time, was just, I could see that his eyes were drawn toward it. Oh, there's the third person. I got another one. But the guy that was onlooking, who didn't even expect me and this preacher to start talking about God, you could tell that he was affected to some extent. I didn't ask him what that extent was, but we also blessed some old folks that we did a delivery for. While we were doing the delivery, she had fell and slipped in the mud, and my partner went and helped her out. And I thought that was kind of cool how he stepped it. It's that same guy that was on overhearing that conversation with the preacher. So who knows, maybe in some weird way. I told my dad the story, and my dad was like, man, I'm glad that guy had that mentality to help, because he could have easily said, no, my priorities to this job. Let the lady get up herself or something. But for whatever reason, he went and offered some real good help to that lady that had slipped.
Good, good.
So God's working.
But Jack won't tell him we weren't here, but he blessed someone more than he realizes. Because we've got this little lady that just depends on him mostly for transportation. He's the one. And he helped her so much to try to battle California through the computer for her to get ready to retire. And it was a pain.
Yeah.
It was truly very inconvenient. The time was inconvenient. He had to take her down, re-notarize, because they got to fill in stuff. But he was a greater blessing than he has any idea. So he won't tell you that.
A blessing is an intentional act that you do for someone else where you actually have to give something of yourself. It can be time, it can be money, it can be effort, it can be attention. It doesn't have to be huge, it can be a very small thing. And the blessing that I'd encourage you to take on for this next week, for some that have done it, again, others that haven't had a chance, is to find 3 people, just 3 this week that you can give a blessing to, and make at least one of those not a member of the church, a non-Christian. Something, what do you got?
Well, I slipped up. I gotta confess. I think in the blessing center is easy, because we're always blessing people, so, I mean, I could go on and on. But I like what Josie has started doing here lately, and I'm glad she's not in here, but, we'll be at the grocery store, or at a restaurant or something, and it's just, do you mind if we get their bill? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I said, no, go ahead, and I mean, it just comes right out of her. And, I'm never thinking about it, but it's, and they just turn around and look at us and, wow, some of them will tear up or whatever. I think that's a pretty neat little deal.
It is. So if you've ever been in one of those situations where somebody in line in the drive-through, paid for your meal or for your coffee or whatever before you were able to get up there in the line at a fast food place. We had an experience where, and I won't say who it was because I think he would be upset with me if I were to tell, that we had an individual here, they're not here anymore, but when we would go to a restaurant, especially whenever our kids were small, if they were in the same restaurant with us, it was not unusual for it to come time for us to leave. And like Santi was talking about, he would have picked up our bill. And he would have already left and we didn't have a chance to say anything to him about it, but we knew who it was. Those are some big things. You can do some little things. Just as much as, going out of your way to say something to somebody that doesn't expect somebody to be nice to them.
Do it.
Yeah.
2 or 3 times. I wear my hat or whatever, but I'm proud of serving the country. But we have been in a restaurant and somebody will walk by and pick up our ticket and just keep right on going. That, you don't know what to say except thank you, and they come back when you serve. Well, I did, but that was my choice.
Yeah. And what you want to get to the point, that's part of living that questionable life. So that somebody, like Peter says, when they ask, why do you do what you do? Why did you bless me like that? Why did you go out of your way to do this for me? Then you be ready with an answer. And it's more than just, well, I just felt like it.
Yeah.
The better answer is, because Jesus has done so much for me, this is a little thing I can pass on to somebody else. That's living a questionable life. That's developing a habit that raises questions, as opposed to somebody's habit, biting their nails or something like that. I mean, you want those good habits. Let's go into what we're going to talk about tonight. I've got an agree-disagree statement up here. Now, we could go ahead and put Jack's in here. Do you agree or disagree? It's better to get than it is to give.
Oh, I came up with one.
Did you?
It's better to lose than to win. I blessed a lot of people by taking losses and just.
Wait, you didn't bless me.
Did you? See,
Wait.
does that sound good to you, dude?
Better to lose than to win.
Better
Sure.
to lose than to win.
Yeah.
He's remembering yesterday.
That's
Oh,
right.
we blessed Kayla and let her win. That's what it was.
That's what it was. Now, the one I want to lay on you tonight, it's not my statement. It's by a guy by the name of, let me get his name right, because I didn't write it down there. Dick Meyer. He was the one that wrote this. All right. It is more blessed to care than it is to cure. It's more blessed to care than to cure. What do you think?
Sometimes you can't cure it, but you care for it.
Sometimes curing is impossible. You cannot solve the problem, but you can always care. Okay? Anybody else?
Well, I could think back and you said in a quick review of what we were studying, you left out the one that got my very most attention is to pray that you would have the desire to do this. So when it's a good thing to have a desire to do it. So to me, that is blessed to care. So you gotta have that desire. And when you care, that actually helps. I just like that.
Yeah.
You think you care a lot, I want to care more.
And oftentimes a care can lead to the cure. But you can try to cure and never care. He told this story. He said, we were sitting in a group sharing our responses to a relational Bible study question when a woman in the group began to cry. Fighting back tears, she went on to say that she was so tired of taking care of people and no one caring for her. She said, I have gobs of friends, but none of them really listen to me. Whenever I share the pain in my life, I immediately receive advice like, well, have you done this? Or have you tried that? Or if I were there, or if I were you, here's what I would do. For once, would someone just listen without trying to fix me? Our group sat in silence as she gave way to her tears. What's your reaction to that?
We wouldn't dare try to help her because she's just told you not to. Big decisions.
Don't fix me.
That has a lot of power though, because I'm always yapping my mouth off wherever we're at. And Josie says, she's always telling me, be quiet and let them talk, let them air out what's on their chest or, what's on their heart or whatever, And, as they're talking, if I don't interject something real quick, I'm gonna forget about it later on, So I gotta, and Josie's always like, and people are like that. They want to be heard. They want somebody to listen to them, and they walk away and say, "Oh, these guys really did listen to me. They really cared." And I feel better now. I feel like I'm cured now. Maybe I don't know.
That is the habit that we want to talk about tonight, is the habit of listening. If we want to be naturals in sharing Jesus, before we start talking, we got to be able to listen. What makes listening so hard? Now, you mentioned one. I got things in my mind, and if I don't get them out there, then I'm going to forget them. And so my mind just keeps racing with what I want to say. And that, when my mind does that, it keeps me from listening well, because I'm going up here trying to formulate what I want to say next. What else makes listening hard?
Takes time. We don't get time back.
Does take time.
You want to be heard too.
Yeah.
You want to, you talk about being Jesus to people or discipling people, and you want to make sure that, the Holy Spirit is working through you as you're talking to this individual, and you feel like God is telling you, don't keep your mouth shut, keep talking, you'll reach him or whatever. But there is and I don't have that talent or gift at all, but I think it's such a gift to be able to just sit there and listen to people. But you want to be heard. And, you feel like what you got to contribute to whatever situation is ahead of you, is in front of you, is deserves to be heard, or I don't know, it's got some wisdom in it or something like that.
Yeah.
I went to a house this week. I told Josie first time I left, it's so discouraged. I didn't know what to say. I did not know what to say. I mean, they were pouring all their issues, all their problems and everything. And I oh my goodness, I need more than a few hours with you guys, I need some time with you. I just kind of walked away, I did pray for them, and I just walked away so discouraged because, but I did sat there and just listen, and the more I heard, the more I'm thinking, wow, how did this happen? Other than allowing sin in your life, and now this is where you're at.
Listening is hard because what it means is getting involved in someone else's life. And it not only makes yourself vulnerable, but like JJ said, it takes time. It takes time of other things that you might like to be doing or want to go and do or think are more important. But listening requires us to stop and just listen. That's what he's listening
As a
for.
married man, mama needs time too, you know, for us to just sit there and listen to her, you know.
She's
But
the,
we're over here trying to rescue the world or whatever, and she feels like, well, wow, what about me?
aren't you listening to me?
Yeah.
And you mentioned another thing. It was a man by the name of Henry Nouwen. He's passed away now, but he wrote a book called The Wounded Healer. And one of his purposes for writing that is to help, especially ministers who you know, like myself, but anyone who's a Christian, to realize that we are called to reach out in a hurting world while we ourselves are hurting. And so we live in a situation where we want to be heard, but we've got to suspend that long enough to listen to someone else. And it's hard to do that sometimes. You know, listening's hard because you want to protect yourself from expectations or from feeling like you've got to say the right thing. Listening's hard because I feel like it's not doing any good. I want to say the right thing. I want to be able to instill in them or give them some gem of wisdom that will just fix it and make everything okay. I mean, listening is hard because I'm holding so much pain, I can't hold somebody else's.
Mhm.
Or I just have never learned how to listen. No one's ever taught me. How do you listen? It means getting involved in somebody's life, but too many people are too busy, or too tired, too self-involved, you name it, to be able to take the time to listen. I'm going to share you some numbers up here. Ever play the numbers game? What is 62%? What is 1/3, 1/4? And since you have no context, it's going to be hard for you to guess what these are. So I'm not going to try to ask you to do so. There's a research group that does a lot of research for Christian organizations. Barna does this, and they partnered up with another group called Alpha Learning or Alpha Evangelism, one of those two. And they did Alpha USA, and they did this joint study on the effectiveness on evangelistic efforts in the United States. What will it take to share Jesus with folks? And they came up with some pretty surprising things. And one of the groups that they really focused on was millennials, because there's a lot of concern out there about millennials and whether they're ever going to come to Christ, and if they're going to make faith meaningful and be serious about it, be involved with other believers and all sorts of questions that come up with that older 20s, 30s kind of group. And so they did a lot of study with them, but they also did study with just people in general out there. And here are some of the things that they came up with. They said 62% are the number of lapsed or non-Christians who said that someone who listens without judgment would be the best person to talk to about faith. I mentioned that again. 62 people out there who describe themselves as non-Christians or lapsed Christians. They used to, but they just don't do it anymore. 62% of them said that a person who listens without judgment would be the best person to talk to about faith. The 1/3. 1/3 are the number of lapsed or non-Christians who say that some of the Christians they know listen without judgment. Okay, so 62%, that's over half, almost 2/3 of the folks out there that are not Christian, said that they would be willing to listen to someone or they would be willing to talk with someone about Jesus if they would just listen without judging. But they said in their experience, only 1/3 of the Christians out there will actually do that. Now we'll talk a little bit more about what that means to listen without judgment. Because after all, we have truth, and we have answers to people's brokenness, and we have answers to people's bad decisions out there. How do you do that without coming across as being judgmental? Because that's one of the things that we worry about. All right, 1/4. 1/4, that's the number of lapsed or non-Christians who say some of the Christians they know allow them to come to their own conclusions as they talk. All right, so you're visiting about truth, you're visiting about what Bible says, you talk about Jesus, and they're saying that 1/4 of the people out there are actually allowing in that conversation for that non-Christian or that lapsed Christian to come to some conclusions based on what's being talked about here. You know, the alternative is, I'm going to tell you what to think. He said there's only 1/4 of the folks out there will actually let us think through it and come to some conclusions. 17%. Now we go to the Christian side. I don't know how they found this, but they said 17% are the number of Christians who demonstrate an interest in other people's stories or listen to them. Now that one's sad, isn't it? Only 17% of Christians actually take time to show interest in other people's stories or to listen to those stories. And then the 1 in 5? The 1 in 5 are Christians who personally take the time to know the story of the person they're sharing their faith with. Is everybody duly depressed now like I am? We have not learned how to listen. It's what this one person said. He said, for so long, we have approached evangelism as an intellectual transfer of information instead of an embrace of the wounds of the heart. That we have decided that evangelism is, I've got to deliver this message. I've got to proclaim this message rather than listening to someone and helping them connect their hurts, their wounds with the great physician, the one that can provide the healing. Now, is that valid? Or should evangelism be just teaching? I went to evangelism workshops. And what evangelism workshops did was give me a technique for sharing the message of the gospel with other people. And so I would learn certain scriptures, I would learn certain questions I was supposed to ask, a certain order of things that I was supposed to go through and deliver that message to people. Now, I'm not going to say that wasn't effective or wasn't helpful, because it was, because it helped me learn how to share the gospel with folks. But is that really the place to start? Think about Jesus. How did he share himself with folks? How did he share the message of himself with people? Now he did preach. He taught the multitudes. He gave a proclamation from many times, over and over
He
again.
would help people with their needs, like if you're blind.
He focused on an individual personally, spent time with them, met them where they had the need. And then, like the man who had been born blind, then he went back to him and had conversation with him. The woman at the well, he didn't do a lot of time just teaching her. He had conversation with her. He listened, had dialogue with her. This guy estimates, his name is Craig Springer, he estimates he counted 370 questions that people asked Jesus in the Gospels. You want to know how many times that Craig Springer found that Jesus answered those 370 questions? This is a trivia question. How many times did Jesus directly answer those 370 questions?
No, very directly.
Yeah. He might have told a parable. He might have done something else. 8 times. 182 of the times, he asked questions in return. We,
That's what I was gonna say on the 1/4. What did you say the 1/4 was?
the 1/4 are the number of lapsed or non-Christians who say some of the Christians they know allow them to come to their own conclusions. That they listen to a teaching or a message of truth and allow them then to wrestle with it and put some things together.
I can't remember exactly how you worded that, but the key point of how you worded it the first time was asking the questions.
Yeah.
Was asking, by letting them come to their own conclusions, rather than telling them what to believe. You've got to be asking the right questions. You've got to, you've got to be asking a lot of questions and learning more about them and about what they think, and when you ask the questions, that's when they're gonna come to their own conclusions rather than, I'm gonna tell you what you should do and what you shouldn't do.
You know, we'll come back to that here in just a minute. Keep that in mind, what is the best way to get people to come to understand what you're trying to tell them, or what's the best way to help them come to those conclusions? Yeah.
I was just gonna bounce off of, what Angela was saying, and it's important. When I first went into the Blessing Center, they were having a Bible class in there, so I sat in there and was listening to it, and they were like, "You got to go to the Church of Christ, you gotta do it." And I was like, oh. Anyway, after that class, I got with that instructor I could have made. Actually, it's law. You can't, because we're governed in certain ways. You can't actually tell the people, you can get this bag of groceries if you go to Green Lawn Church of Christ and stuff. And you let them come to their own conclusion. You definitely want them to go to the church, but you let them come to their own conclusion, and then not, I'll give you this bag of food or these whatever, these blessings if you, because then people come in with the wrong motives anyway, so.
How many times was Jesus's help to folks conditioned on whether they followed him or not? Never. He said, "Okay, I'll give you your sight if you promise that you're going to boom, boom, boom. I'll feed you this bread and this fish if you promise me that you will." He didn't do that. He put it out there and let them make up their own mind. Okay, we said it's more blessed to care than it is to cure. The old adage is, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that's true, isn't it? So the question is for us, how do you communicate with folks that you actually care? And it kind of gets back to what Angela was talking about, and kind of you bounced off of about asking good questions. How do people know that you care? See, it's really important that the power of listening is so important. Listening conveys this message that you are a valuable person to me. You're not just a project.
I've talked to several people in the past, and as I'm talking to them, I'm looking at them, and they're moving their lips. And I'm assuming that they're thinking, how am I going to respond to what he's telling me? But they're not thinking about what I'm saying. I'm assuming that.
Yeah.
And one thing that I had, and I don't know that it was a health issue or what, but people could be talking to me, and at a certain point, I'd phase them off. And my aunt saw that one time, and she said, "Hey, I'm talking to you," because I had other things in my mind. I was on my way to go teach a seminar somewhere, and I was overwhelmed by that, and then I was thinking, well, what am I going to say? And she was trying to tell me about some flowers that she had planted, and I listened for a little bit, and then after, 2 or 3 seconds later, and she noticed that, and she said, "Hey," but from time to time, I do that. People are talking to me, and I just phase them off.
Yeah.
And they can see it.
Yeah.
And some of them are,
The eyes glass
Yeah.
over.
some of them are nice enough to tell me, or honest enough at least to tell me, "Hey, you're not listening." Oops, sorry.
Yeah, when a person's not listening, it says, what you're saying is not important to me. In fact, you're not important to me. And when it comes to this, what we're talking about sharing Jesus,
Yeah,
if a person gets the idea that they aren't valuable to me, they just become a project for me. They become another notch in my belt. Okay, I've shared the gospel with you. I can move on to the next. They got to know that I care. Listening creates an environment that welcomes questions without fear of judgment or fear of rejection. It provides an experience of what faith actually looks like. I mean, asking questions and seeking God's answers. That's what faith is. Asking good questions and trusting God with those questions. It establishes the basis for living in potential unity with other folks, even in the face of our differences. That's what Jesus hoped for. He said in his prayer there on that Last Supper, he said, I pray for those that will come after my apostles, that they would be one. Listening allows for that unity to take place. And listening prepares me to answer questions being asked instead of proclaiming a message that doesn't connect with them. How do I know that my message is going to touch on their life if I don't listen long enough to find out what it is they're asking? I'm just talking past them instead of actually listening. And so that's especially important today. We live in a technology-saturated world, in a relationally distant world, and especially at the end of this past year. People are hungry for those connections. As one person says, we live in a culture of tribes, diatribes, echo chambers. In our polarized reality, we fight over everything. And if you start with proclamations, apologetics, or facts, it shuts the conversation down before it begins. Non-Christians often feel hostility toward Christians. They see the Christian way of life as extremist and no longer helpful to society because they've been listening to what media has been saying about Christians. They don't really care about you. They're just interested in their own projects, their own extremism. They hear that Christians want to fix, moralize, judge, and critique. They don't really want to help. And what we've got to do is change that. And the way you change it, listen. You stop and listen. So how do you do that? James said, in James 1:19, he said, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. And the next verse is pretty important because he says, because anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. Now, the context is specifically about anger. But you know, whenever I'm not listening, then people are afraid to tell me things because they're afraid of how I'm going to react. Am I going to have an outburst? Am I going to react negatively? Am I going to react in anger with what I say? They want to know that I care. So, lesson number one in learning to listen. This is lesson number one. In fact, this is what I tell parents. If we're going to do love and logic class, is the number one lesson that you got to learn. Sometimes you just got to keep your mouth shut.
Well, Solomon said even a fool can be perceived as wise if he learns to control his tongue.
That's right. Where's keep his mouth shut? What's the old proverbs or the old adage? You know, don't open your mouth and prove that you're a fool. Something to that effect. Yeah.
But people think you're a fool, open your mouth and prove you are.
Prove you are one. So how do you listen? Well, let's talk about the nonverbal cues. How do you listen with your body?
That's really important because psychology 101, you know, this person's trying to listen. You see them sitting there. And so you stall and you know, well, they know that they just keep quiet, you'll keep going. And so you find out, hey, this is psychology 101 they're using on me. I'm really not interested in that. Now, if they lean into it and say, oh, they'll lean into it. Ooh, that must have hurt. And a comment can go on or something. But when they use it psychology 101 on, you turned off.
Yeah.
but certain things mean things like, the crossing of your arms, or your rolling of your eyes, or,
Looks around.
yeah. stuff like that, you know, they're like, "Look, this guy," you know.
That's one of my worst, with my job, I'm constantly looking for someone I need to catch, somebody I need to talk to. And somebody will be talking to me and I'll be looking around to see if, who do I need to go to next? And what I'm communicating is, I'm not listening to you. I've got other things I need to get to.
But we know you, I understand that. I mean,
You
I
got
really,
that.
I really do think that we need to really be watching them too, because that is true.
Yeah.
And if you've reached the point that they're not listening, or you might as well go ahead and move on. I see you're busy, that's cool, and let them go.
Because you're listening. Yeah. So you've mentioned a few things, eye contact. Making that eye contact, really focusing it, is that leaning in. You can do this, but if you lean into it, not step away from it. To tilt the head a little bit, even tilt the body a little bit. To express that.
fall over with that.
You fall over, yeah, okay, so know your limitations on listening that way.
There's one other little point, it's the same thing as interrogation. I mean, seriously, you're wanting to keep them talking, so when you study this and you wanna keep them talking, you know when people are doing it to you. That's what I'm trying to say,
And
because you do know.
And that's a good point. We are not talking about a gimmick here. We are not talking about, I'm going to listen to you so that I can baptize you. That isn't the goal. The goal is to listen so I can develop a connection with you, so I can develop a relationship with you, so that I can get back to last week, so that I can bless you in some way. And the way I'm going to bless you this time is I'm going to listen. I'm going to take the time to let you talk to me and share yourself with me. It's not going to be a gimmick. It's going to be a genuine concern and interest in what you have to say. Kayla, when she was about 3 or 4 years old, we knew that she was not listening to what we said unless she was looking at us. We had her eye contact. And so if she was not listening because she wasn't looking at us, I would take her face and I would turn it to me and say, you need to listen to me. All right? Did that multiple times. We were standing, and I think this is in Tyler, whenever we were there, because she was, like I said, 3 or 4 years old. And I was holding her, and she was telling me something. And people were walking around, and of course, I was looking for this teacher or that person, like I was talking about, needing to find somebody. She took her little hands, she put them on my cheeks, she turned my face to her, and she said, Daddy, I need you to listen to me.
Hmm.
She learned at a very early age. I know you're listening to me when?
You're looking at.
When I'm looking at you. And I'm not distracted by something else. Well, it takes practice. You got to develop that habit. And see, for many of us, we have gotten into a habit. Remember, all this is about habits, developing new habits. Most of us got into the habit of not listening, of being preoccupied or going other places. We've got to develop a habit of stopping long enough to be able to listen. What about listening through our words? How do you listen through your words? Where you actually say something, but you're still listening. It gets back to asking good questions. That as somebody is talking to me, rather than making statements about what they said, I start asking questions about what they said.
I picture that psychiatrist saying, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. And you can ask questions like that, but it sounds something more like, that must have made you really upset, didn't it? And then they tell you, yeah, that was upset. Or they say, no, it just made me frustrated. Or no, it didn't bother me. But you ask those questions. It's that quiet listening. It can be it's what one person called empathic grunts. That's where you're not going to say yes or no to call a judgment on what somebody's saying, but it's the But it communicates, I'm keying into what you're telling me here, but it's kind of a neutral response, but I am responding. It's the sensitive probing into what they're saying, those questions about, well, tell me more. What do you mean by that? The clarifying inquiry, where I'm asking, well, I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're saying here. Tell me a little bit more. Or are you saying this? And then they have the chance to tell you, no, this is what I'm saying, or yeah, you've got it. They know that you're listening. Or the discerning restatement, where it said, well, what I'm hearing you say is, and you restate it. He says, is that what you're saying? And you're right. A lot of that's psychology. A lot of this is things that people train people and how to listen. But again, what we want to do is make it more of a habit. This is just who we are. This is how we do it naturally when we're talking with folks. So that they understand that I care. And this is especially important when it comes to talking with somebody that you disagree with. You know those folks that you just really have a hard time with because you know whatever comes out of their mouth is going to be dumb. They're of an opposing political spectrum. You know what's going to come out of their mouth, just dumb. Or they disagree with you on some religious point. Or their feelings are so immature or so childish. Or their opinion about something is just so off the wall that you don't want to spend time with it. How do you deal with that? You ask questions. Tell me more about why you think that. And it's really important. If it's something you disagree with, the more important questions are. Because what you want to do is you want to try to connect with them and try to get behind, why do you think that? Why do you feel that way? What is it that makes you say that? So real quick, avoid the cure statements. Cure statements, somebody's telling you something. Cure statements are things like, don't worry, it'll work out. Or, well, have you tried this? Or, I struggled with that when I was younger. It'll pass. Or something like, well, why don't you try this? Or, I know someone who faced a similar situation. Here's what they did. Hear all the statements about curing it, fixing it. It's like that lady in the Bible study. She didn't want somebody to fix her. She wants somebody to care about her. So here are the care statements. How can I support you in this? This sounds really hard, or this sounds really painful. This sounds really frustrating for you. Or, man, I appreciate you sharing that part of you with me. I never knew. Or, I wish I could do something. I'm feeling pretty helpless right now. That's kind of what you say when you don't know what to do. I'm feeling kind of helpless right now. It's okay to say that. What it says is, man, I care. I want to do something. I just really don't know what to do right now. And then you can even follow it up with a question. Is there something that somebody could do? And they may say, no, I just want somebody to listen. Or, it's okay. Is it okay to call you in a couple of days and see how you're doing with all this? And then you put it on your calendar so you make sure and you call them in a couple of days. Now, understand where we're stopping here. We're stopping here to say this. The habit is listening. It is not knowing what to do after you listen. It is not knowing what to say, the right thing, the right words to say while you're listening. Because we focus on that too much and we never spend time listening. So the assignment this week is to listen. Find an opportunity to listen and to hold your tongue, to keep yourself from trying to jump into fixing it, advising it, giving solutions, whatever it is. You just listen. This also means that as you're listening to someone, fight the temptation to say, well, this is what happened to me too soon. Because what I do too many times is I'm listening to somebody tell me something and then I want to one-up them. Oh, well, that's nothing. Let me tell you what happened to me. Well, you don't really care what happened to me there, do you? Don't beat yourself up if you don't get it right the first, second, or third time. Just practice a new habit. Listen. And then come back next week and be ready to share how people reacted when they felt listened to. It may be surprising. Let's pray. Father, we want to share your love and your care with other people. You love us so much. You listen to us. We come to you in prayer like this anytime we need to, every time we want to. And we know that you listen. And yet we have such a hard time sharing that gift with someone else. So Father, help us to develop that habit. Help us to be good listeners so that we can be good carers. We can develop a connection with someone that would actually cause them to ask, why are you so interested in me? Thank you, Father, for giving us opportunities to listen. In Jesus' name, amen.